എല്ലാവർക്കും പുതിയൊരു വീഡിയോയിലേക്ക് ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് സ്വാഗതം. I just got home from watching Nosferatu. Yes, Nosferatu was one of 2024's most anticipated, most hyped up horror film, and I was so disappointed that here in India, the movie did not release on 20th December 2024. In fact, it released here today. Today is the 10th of Jan 2025. So yeah, I just ran to the theaters as soon as bookings opened, and I cannot tell you how much I've waited for this movie. If you're new to my channel, hello, welcome, happy new year and namaste. On this channel we discuss all kinds of horror content, horror movies, horror short films, horror series. Sometimes I even narrate horror stories. So it's all things horror. And for someone who watches at least 2 horror movies a week for my mental health, I cannot tell you how much I've adored Bram Stoker's Dracula. As a child, I read that book at least 1 laksham times. It's an exaggeration, but I've read it many times. And I watched the first Nosferatu, and it has been one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Which means when I first heard that another Nosferatu movie was coming out, my expectation was like there. I'm aware that horror movie fans across the globe had really high expectations for Nosferatu because that book is famous. The movie is even more famous. So the creators of the movie were probably under immense pressure to come out with something new or, add their own masala into it or do something new with a story that has been told, retold and revamped so many times. So when I'm going to review the movie, I'm going to be considerate of the fact that they didn't have a lot to work with. Everyone knows what the story is. There's not going to be any surprise plot twists or anything like that. They've done justice to the original story, which means there's no new element in the story as such. And we're still going to be very kind with our review because this is an iconic story. If you're new to my channel, I don't do the typical review format, which is to list out all the positives and then list out all the negatives. My review has a very simple format. The first few minutes are directed at people who are on the fence about watching a horror movie. So they just want a push in either direction. Should they spend their time and watch this movie or should they not? So that part of the review is going to be very concise. I will probably speak in adjectives and tell you whether you should consider watching a movie or not, and that's about it. In the second half, I do a detailed breakdown. I will discuss the story, potential loopholes, how the actors were, and maybe even make a comment about how they could have done it differently. Not that I'm an expert, but of course, I would like to speak my mind on my own channel. So without much further ado, let's commence the one-liner review of Nosferatu. If you are a horror fan, go watch it. You're going to love it. There are some really aesthetic shots. There's some creepy music also. All in all, they've done justice to the Nosferatu storyline. That being said, my favorite is still the first one. That was a silent film. And with all that silence, that movie still made a lot more impact on me than this movie did with its Dolby sound. I don't know why. This didn't scare me. It was unsettling, but I wasn't scared. The first Nosferatu scared me. Of course, I was a child when I watched it, so that could be one reason. But I've been watching horror movies as long as I can remember, and this movie did not scare me. It just made me like, oh no, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Yes, I was aware what the story is going to be. I've already read the books, I've watched the first Nosferatu. All of these could contribute to me not being scared, but it still didn't unsettle me enough, is what I would say. It is a masterpiece of a movie in terms of the aesthetics, but the story, the movie, the entire package did not scare me. But if you are a horror fan, please go ahead and watch it. It's a very artsy aesthetic movie, and yes, the acting is phenomenal. Count Orlok and Lily Rose Depp, hats off. They've done a stellar job. So yeah, that concludes my one-liner review, which has turned into a 1-paragraph review. But anyway, please go and watch it if you're a horror movie fan. But otherwise, if you're on the fence, if you're just wondering whether you should watch this movie or not because it's created some noise on social media, maybe you can skip it. Watch the first Nosferatu. You're going to enjoy that one a lot more. Right, so let's do the detailed breakdown of Nosferatu. For those of you who are unaware of the story, let me summarize it for you. There's this accountant, he's freshly married, newly married, and he's got this wife. She is someone who's since childhood suffered from visions and episodes of frenzy and mania where she just goes into a trance-like state and starts shivering and everything. So she's basically had a big battle with mental health ever since she was a child. And in her own words, she describes herself as someone who seems to have some sort of psychic capabilities. Like she was always, you know, capable of guessing what her Christmas presents were or predict things before they could happen. Like she predicted the death of her mother. So she describes herself as someone who seems to have a connection to the occult and the dark realm. Yeah. So they're newly married, they're not doing really well in terms of money. And this husband, his name is Thomas, he gets this offer from the boss to go onboard a client who lives somewhere far off, and it's a 6 week journey. He has to go there, get the papers signed, so that the count can buy some property in his town, like the accountant's town where he lives with his wife. And he goes there, and there he meets Count Orlok, played phenomenally by Bill Skarsgård. Oh my god, we'll get to that later. But yeah, and when he goes there, since he's gonna miss his wife, and they did not have WhatsApp video or Skype or Zoom or anything, so he carries a lock of his wife's hair with him. When he goes to the castle to meet the count, he sort of is immediately creeped out. The place is dark. People in that town do not like the idea of that count living there, and there are some hushed whispers about a corpse that drinks blood, all of that. And he goes there, he gets the paper signed, and he keeps having these nightmares about the count coming to suck his blood. And he somehow manages to escape when, in one incident, he does see that the count is in fact a corpse inside a coffin. He escapes and somehow makes his way back to his wife. That takes some time, but it's happening in the background. Meanwhile, when the wife is here in her town, Wisburg, I believe, she also starts to get scary visions about this person who is coming in her dreams, professing his love for her, and in a very creepy way tells her that she doesn't belong to this world, she belongs with him, and therefore she must give up her husband and be this creepy person's wife. So this is like the summary of it. And he has all the characteristics of, you know, a regular vampire. He can't step out in the sun, he needs to feed on blood to survive, yada yada yada, the usuals. So nothing is new in this movie in that aspect. It's all the tried and tested parameters. It's all there. What I really loved, of course, was the acting. Lily Rose Depp has done a phenomenal job. I'm not going to make a comment about her acting. I'm not an actor myself. But at one point, it seemed like every time she gets possessed, she does this shaky thing, which was great at first, but then afterwards it started looking funny. It probably was not done with CGI. She probably shook her body herself, and it started to look odd in like some parts. And another thing that I had a huge problem was with the Orlok sounded so asthmatic. Like you could hear him breathe even when he's not in the scene. Like he's not in the shot anywhere, but you can hear him breathe. And the breathing, my god, that guy needs an inhaler. And his accent was spot on, but when that was combined with this wheezy sort of breathing, it was like, Count Orlok. I can't imitate it. It's really difficult on my throat. Yeah, so these two things were sort of irritating after a point. After like the first half, it got to me. You know how you feel when you hear the sound of someone chew? Yeah, that's how I started to feel towards the end when I could hear Orlok breathe. Sorry. Willem Dafoe only appears in a really small section of the movie towards the end. He's done a great job. Obviously, it's Willem Dafoe, he can't go wrong. In terms of acting, Lily Rose and Bill Skarsgård stood out. I'm so disappointed that Bill Skarsgård's real face was not shown. Such a waste of that handsome face. But anyway, yeah, so my one-liner review was that if you're a horror fan, you should go watch it. Otherwise, give it a miss. My detailed review is that the lead actors did a stellar job in terms of acting. The story, nothing new there. The shots, perfectly framed. The sound effects were beautiful. But in the end, they kind of overdid it with the thick accent and the Orlok breathing and Lily Rose Depp's convulsions. Barring that, I think it was a great watch. In terms of jump scares, there were two that were really good. The first one comes within the first 5 minutes of the movie, and that kind of jolted me awake. I knew that the jump scare was coming, but I couldn't predict it, like when exactly and how it would come. But that was good. Yeah. And then there was another one with some rats that was also good. So yeah, my review is that it was great, but not magnificent like everyone's claiming to be. I still like the first Nosferatu more. Like I said, despite being a silent film, that film scared the bejesus out of me. And so many years later, it is still considered as one of the most iconic horror movie films. Until I see you in the next video, this is unbelievable. Bye. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Come find me on Instagram if you have any questions. Namaste. Bye.